Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast, available on all platforms including YouTube if you prefer to watch. My name is Jeremy Blaine, CEO of Performance Works International, Executive Director of the Transformational Leadership Acceleration Institute, and Managing Partner of Diversity Talent. My aim is to bring insights from leaders, experts, and highly talented professionals from around the world. Insights, stories, and advice from the front lines of modern leadership to engage, inspire, and mobilize progress back in the workplace. Every episode is a learning opportunity for us all. The Rethink Leadership podcast also supports charities around the world. Each episode is in aid of a cause chosen by my guests, and to date I'm proud to say we've supported over 60 global and local great causes. Welcome to this episode of the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. My guest today is Dr. Anna Eckardt, Managing Partner of MyLearningBoutique. She's an organisational consultant, strategist, executive coach, governance expert, and most recently co-founder of SOLARIS, which she discusses more during our conversation. She's an advocate for leaders to become positive mind shifters for themselves and with others, particularly as the pressure on them and their businesses intensifies when we consider the transformations many are navigating, the unpredictable nature of the current climate, digital impact, and leaders' own development journey for fast-moving, change-centered times. It's tough and beginning to impact even the most competent leaders in mental health, anxiety, and physical well-being terms. There's a need for many leaders to slow down in order to accelerate in business terms, and slowing down is better than breaking down in personal terms. So how do we change this paradigm? What needs to be done to help our leaders, and how can leaders help themselves? Let's welcome Anna, and she can tell us more. Anna, thanks so much for joining me. Please introduce yourself, your vocation in business, and something about you that not many people know.
I love this. Jeremy, it's thank you for the invitation. I'm absolutely thrilled to be on your podcast, and it's really an honor and pleasure. So as you know, because we know each other for quite some time already, I'm one of the managing partners of MyLearningBoutique, which is an internationally active consulting, training, and coaching company. We're based in Switzerland. I'm working for over 15 years now with senior leaders. Actually, if you count my previous career before MyLearningBoutique, I've been always working with senior leaders, with CEOs and what have you. But now I'm working with leaders in organizations as a consultant who's supporting them in corporate transformations, but also I'm as well an executive coach. So combining this professional background that I have, I also have a profound interest in research. I'm a late PhDer. I've just recently added a PhD to my curriculum. And, one of the focus areas of my, of my research is around attention, managerial attention, decision-making, and it is around focus. So the combination of both and perhaps a little bit of serendipity, and the serendipity part is my partner, coming across the right partner in crime who has similar ideas to you, enabled me to launch, let's call it an initiative, which we call SOLARIS. Yeah, and our podcast here is around introducing a little bit the concept of SOLARIS. And we're aiming at addressing impacts of what we feel is a hyper acceleration in the way around us in the context, right? And how this impacts leadership performance is the part that I'm most interested in, right? So this is a little bit the intro, and then you gave me this lovely task to introduce, to say something that not a lot of people know about myself. And I think in that context, perhaps there are even two things that not a lot of people know about me. And the first one is that, me, myself, we will be talking about impacts on leaders and how it feels to be stressed out. So what not a lot of people know about myself is that me too, I've been through two different episodes of my life where I was very close to a burnout. Today we have a more fancy word for this because that's more precise. It's called burn on, actually. depression. So I know exactly how it feels when I talk to my coaches. And then the second funny part, that not a lot of people know about myself is that I'm completely obsessed with sleep. Sleep is really something that I read about it, I practice, I offer, I supervise, and I torture my entire family in surveying their sleep. Two fun things, or maybe not so fun, but important things about myself.
Wow. Well, yeah, and I can relate to your point on burnout personally too, and it's much more common than we think. So I totally get your initiative around Solaris, which we'll go into. And it's the first time I've had Morpheus as a guest on my podcast for sure. Yeah. So obsessed with sleep, absolutely fantastic. I love that. I wish I could become more obsessed with sleep. Buy in a little bit more, but there you go.
I can promise you, perhaps after you've listened to your own podcast or we've been through this podcast, you will discover the importance of sleep, and hence, you will get, you will also get obsessed with it. Perhaps. Let's see.
Great, thanks. Yes, and I like the way that you pointed to, why don't you listen to your own podcast? That'll help you sleep. Thank you so much. So anyway, we'll come back to the senior leaders. And you talk about hyper-acceleration, yes, and the pressure on business and senior leaders is intense, more so with the transformations in place, the constant change, complexity, interconnectivity of things. And we just have unpredictability and uncertainty ahead in many of the industries where we are. So a very simple question, but I imagine quite a complex answer. How are leaders that you're talking to at the moment, Anna?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. The leaders that I talk to, how are they? They are under continuously increasing pressure, or at least this is how it feels for them. It seems like, since the pandemic, it kind of went even more on steroids, I would guess. There is this acceleration that you already mentioned. The leaders tell me stuff that there is this necessity to change how the way their organizations work, how the people have been working. What we call the VUCA world also demands an incredible amount of what we call hyper focus, meaning that you are super attentive to even, very little small cues everywhere. So the attentional load, right, or the let's say the energy that it takes today to really stay at the top of the game is really, really high. And there is another aspect that I think they tell me very frequently is that and in a way it's they I wouldn't call them victims, because these people are no victims. Leaders are very resilient, but this necessity to really make so many decisions. I mean, a couple of years ago, a leader would make perhaps 5 decisions in a week. Now we make 10 decisions in a day, right? So there is this constant pressure or constantly adapt. And this comes with a high price tag, right? So hyperfocus comes with a price tag because, as I mentioned, it demands a lot of energy. So leaders feel really physically and emotionally exhausted. On the top of it, there's this excitement because you're constantly on, which leads to sleep deprivation very often, right? Unhealthy habits. Speaking of my obsession about sleep, I don't know if you've read about it, but I think it was 2019 or 20. Even the WHO, so the World Health Organization, has declared, that we live in a global epidemic of sleeplessness, right? So this is a really major issue. And the lack of sleep and this high pressure all the time has really also physical, let's say, impacts on how leaders feel. And it starts with bodily feelings like, we have hypertension. So leaders go into hypertension, right? Out of a sudden, they've always been fit, and out of a sudden, they have heart problems, hypertension, anxiety to underperform. And overall, it feels, especially through the pandemic, where we perhaps also had these on and off and disconnects at times, there has been a great rethink, right? And you've had your beautiful survey on the leadership rethink, right? So I think we kind of aligned on that. There has been a great rethink about, is it really worth it, right? In a nutshell, how far do I need to push myself, and how far am I able to push myself before I kill myself, right? Or is it better to quit the job in order to survive or to have a better quality of living, right? And what these leaders tell me, in a way, is really in line with your survey findings, right? With your and there also has been recently a global leadership forecast run by DDI, and also reporting that the rates of burnout in leaders are hitting year by year, are hitting all-time highs, right? So more leaders are than ever feel they are close to burnout or burned out already. So that's in a nutshell what I hear, right?
Some very interesting things here, and the word hyper comes through a lot, doesn't it? That hyper acceleration, hyper focus, the need to be on, it seems, 24/7 at times. And while some leaders appear to have that resilience, you do wonder what's going on inside with some of them, for sure. And that's it. Actually, I hadn't heard about the global sleeplessness epidemic, but I am not surprised in the context of we're talking about, because the clear fact is for leaders, for some leaders particularly, it's either slow down or breakdown. So I'm kind of interested to hear, if we just track forward a year or two, Anna, so we understand there's some short-term harm here, but what are the consequences if this carries on for a little bit longer on leaders and their leadership effectiveness? And do you have any examples?
Yes. So long-term, but also short-term, right? The consequences that we see already now, and they will be getting visible more and more because of the nature of the game, right? Unfortunately, mostly negative, right? And we can see them on I would say perhaps two different levels. The first level is really the physical level, right? And I mentioned some of that already. Increased hypertensions. People trying to cope, develop a lot of unhealthy lifestyle habits. We have a higher intake, another epidemic, right, by the way, of legal and illegal drugs, right, to calm yourself down, to go to, to sleep, to lower pain and stuff like that. So people are developing really very unhealthy coping mechanisms and unhealthy habits, which on the longer run, for sure, if not changed, will not get unpaid, meaning they will have serious health, lead to different serious health damages on the longer run. And of course, there is, I just want to flag that because you also mentioned to it. And of course, there's always this exceptional people who, despite all odds, survive and thrive in this. And, but let's face it, we're still in a normal distribution, meaning that, if one or two of these exceptional people who for ages could survive and be very proactive on 4 hours of sleep and so on and so forth, and high tension and high let's say pressure, then that's rather the exception. So physical impact is the first, and the second one is really a psychological impact. And the psychological impact has a meaning on what you just said, is the leadership effectiveness, because it impacts the leadership behaviors, right? And this high level of pressure and stress actually leads to a lack of or decrease of focus and intentional attention, meaning that, people are like overwhelmed with stimuli, and they have difficulties to select the right ones, because there are simply so many and they're in this wheel, which, impedes their way how they process it as well. And ultimately, impacts the quality of their decision making. I mentioned that, now another hyper trendy word is that hyper focus. But, in order to be hyper focused, you also be hyper selective. Otherwise, you just get overwhelmed, right? So that's what we see. Under stress, it's also far more difficult to listen. So, one of the key leadership, I would say, to me as a leadership, let's say, scholar as well, and a coach, one of the key leadership aspects and effectiveness areas is the capacity to listen. So when you're stressed, and I think we all know it, we are not very good at listening. What we also are not very good at is to manage our own emotions, so reduced emotional capabilities. Your emotional self-management, but also empathy is severely hampered. We just don't have bandwidth for that, On the other hand, what we also observe is that because of all this, hyper, this increase anxiety levels, and anxiety levels leads very often to micromanagement, right? Because people try to regain control. And that obviously has a severe impact, and I can come up with a couple of examples in a second on how leaders lead. And last but not least, something that is also more in demand than ever, especially when we have turbulent times, is of course creativity, right? When you're under stress, you're simply not creative. We have a vast body of evidence and research, demonstrating the correlation between, the amygdala response, brain response, and how this is counterproductive to, being creative, being invent stuff, but on the other hand, creativity is exactly what you need if you are in a situation of constant change, creativity and innovation. And when you're under stress, you're not very innovative and you're not very creative. And, so at large, what this is, and that's maybe not, this is how it kind of then shows, is that, the leadership effectiveness actually decreases, and the leadership effectiveness has severe impact on organizational performance, right? So it overall, it lowers organizational performance. And then we're getting into this very vicious circle, because lower performance stresses leaders even more out, right?
Well, gosh, so much there, Anna, and I want to go deeper into that as well. Did you have some examples for us?
So to very good point. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, examples. So for example, I would say day-to-day business of leaders, and this is what when I'm working as a coach, very often this is what I'm working with the leaders that I coach is they need to be persuasive, motivational, influential, and actually they negotiate all day long, right? But when you're tired and you don't listen well, and you get triggered more easily, right? Because everything kind of gets close to you. So especially, when people don't agree with you, right? And you just want to get that stuff done, right? Or I want you to agree with me in that negotiation. That's what we're doing. Let's do it, right? Then the feedback, or what happens then, and how these leaders very often react is that, depending, of course, on their own individual personality, but they may get aggressive, they get stubborn, they get cynical, they get impatient, and they display all these levels of, really completely let's say, unhelpful behaviors that hamper, actually the effect of, persuasion and influence is gone. And what we see, and where we really kind of, have like somewhat concrete evidence, is that, for example, and I'm involved in quite a lot of negotiations as well as a let's say helping partner, is that zero-sum games begins. Everybody starts to pull over the other. So there's this collaborative aspect of creating win-win solutions is out of the window. Negotiations take longer. They are less constructive. And at the end of the day, outcomes are suboptimal. Yeah. What I also see is, maybe from that more decision-making point, is that, this stress in a way also really hampers your capacity, or you have more difficulty to deal with ambiguity, in the sense that you have more difficulty to actually really think through stuff when you are in an ambiguous situation. But let's face this is what is bread and butter for leaders, right? All the rest is delegated down to management and stuff, right? So leaders are in that sphere 24/7. But if you don't have the bandwidth to step back, step out, if you don't have the capacity anymore to reevaluate, to validate your facts, then what I see is really, leaders jump into conclusion on the first best one, and you see that leadership outcomes are just, or decision making is at large not as productive, and the outcomes are just not as good, so not well thought through, which leads to the fact that they have to be corrected and adjusted, and back to the spiral. So on the leadership effectiveness then, and I mentioned that already, is this fact that, this micromanagement also becomes extremely prominent. So back again to what I mentioned previously on the examples, sometimes I also coach people who work for these leaders. And then, this micromanagement is really an incredible disruptive and negative, has negative consequences actually on the overall culture of the organization, right? So in a way, through this micromanagement and this urge to get back in control, so we control people and what they do more than we ought to, we set conditions for employees to fail. And I don't know if you know the book, and I can only recommend it. It's the Set Up to Fail syndrome, but Jean-Louis Barsoux and Manzoni, excellent book on how you can, through your mindset, actually set your employees up for failure. But maybe more trendy, micromanagement also demonstrates a deep lack of trust, right? And the deep lack of trust, in a way, or this can be perceived as a deep lack of trust. Let me put it this way. And the deep lack of trust is, it's not even correlated. I think it's even causal with psychological safety, right? So psychological safety, on the other hand, is needed for employees to be motivated, to flourish, to get the extra mile. So instead of being, flourishing and excited and motivated, people are getting anxious. They are stressed. We have that Gallup study showing that, employees are overly stressed and more stressed than ever. 44% of employees report that they are close to a burnout. So we have this slump in employee engagement as a result. As a result of, lower employee engagement, we actually have, they are less proud of the quality of products. They are less proud of their organizations. They are less loyal. We have there's this Edelman trust barometer overall trust in organizations from inside, but from outside just plunges. And very simply put, employees are just simply really unhappy, right? So in a way, through stress, we can, when this is pertinent, I mean, when it kind of, it's not like a stressful episode, but when it becomes more, a stressful overall life for years and years, we can say goodbye to our wonderful leadership concepts, it's like transformational leadership, servant leadership, transcendent, charismatic, and what have you. I mean, this is just gone. Yeah, under stress, it's almost impossible unless you are a professional actor. So, let me be a little bit radical here. What remains is we're remaining with transactional dictators, right? Transactional dictators at times with psychopathic tendencies, because they need to survive, so they don't care about anybody else anymore, right? And this has a direct impact on culture, on values, on ethics, and on corporate performance. And when we were preparing for this speech, you asked me about do you know of body of evidence? And yeah, we have vast body of evidence that behavior, this type of behavior, between employee happiness has an incredible impact on corporate performance. There are studies on how happy employees are better in sales. Business units with engaged employees have far better operating profit margins and what have you. So this is not just about feeling good. Yeah, like let's work in a place where we all are happy and more motivated, but it also, you have also evidence in numbers at the end. You have a price tag, right? So there is a price tag that comes with it.
Wow, so much to get under the skin of there. And my short summary of that is that it affects everything. And one of the problems that we've got is there's a double effect at the moment as well. It's the leaders and it's the employees, and that can only bode badly for the organization. And it's no wonder that there are many other pieces of research that are talking about leadership failure rates, including our own research, accelerating in all of this when you've got kind of unhealthy leaders with real mental health problems in some cases as well. Affects everything. But I really get some of the things that you talk about as well, the unhealthy coping mechanisms, the fact that they're hit with so many stimuli that actually they start to develop an attention disorder because they just can't create with that. And you're right. And then they just go with the gut, or they just go with the first choice, and they get it off their agenda, and then it's somebody else's problem. So let's try and move away from that situation that's is, and let's try and look at how we help leaders and the rest of the organization, of course, and how we move forward. And that's really at the heart of your focus at Solaris, which I'd like to get under the skin of. And if you could tell us a bit more about that, and specifically how you aim to help leaders navigate these personal challenges so that they're able to get out. And I saw this term on your website, which I really like, out of the Great Exhaustion. That really speaks to me, that does. And back to being effective leaders.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. I mean, I think this is really our deepest mission, and not only for leaders, but let's say for everybody who is experiencing this, right? But in particular for leaders. So if you want to, Solaris, in Solaris, we have mainly 3 goals for our participants, right? We're fellow travelers on the journey, as we call them. And well, to start with, it is really about when they embark on our Solaris journey, which is a holistic research-based week-long experience. You could call it a retreat, but more to this in a minute. So the first start would be really to recharge and reset, like right away. But in order to kind of have a long-term change, or not to go on this like, okay, I'm going on a week of holidays, I do a couple of things, and then I go back, and Jeremy, you and I, we've been too long in leadership for training as well, not to know, this question, and what will you do differently on Monday, right? And they go back, and what do they differently on Monday after the retreat? Literally nothing, right? So we want to really make it help them to create long-lasting changes. And that's why, for me, the first step to create long-lasting change is really to create understanding about the mechanics and the key leverage points that they have to significantly improve their mental health and their physical health, right? You need to understand what you are playing with, so that you can really then choose as well what kind of habits or what kind of changes, leverage points you have. And this is perhaps the coach coming in, right? As a coach, we're always at the service of the person, right? We're not deciding what people do. We offer ideas and we trigger thinking, and the people need to figure out what works for them. So the third part would be really to then support them by providing them with a variety of healthy practices that they can pick from, and that could help them become new habits to maintain their well-being in a sustainable way in their own environment, right? So when they go back to on Monday, and we call this recalibration. Yeah, in a way, you need to find recalibration, because it seems like, with their way of going about, with their way of working, they are somehow not perhaps fit for purpose under the new circumstances. So it's a little bit like you need to kind of reset yourself in these new circumstances and figure out, how do I navigate this? And, in order to develop a mindset to cope with this new environment without quitting. Yeah, or without burning out, or without quietly quitting, right? As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm obsessed with sleep, but I'm also, obsessed with research. So for me, it's really important that we are basing, all our, let's say, approaches is based on research. We tap into the area of neuroscience. We're using neuroplasticity. I can talk about that a little bit more later. To help with attention and focus. We tap into Zen philosophy, into mindfulness, into meditation practice. But we are, we look at it from a holistic perspective, meaning that you also tap into body work. We work with biofeedback, with breath. Guess what? With sleep, right? Nutrition, and what have you, to really take care also of the physical aspect of the body, because stress has a huge price tag on physical health as well. So we propose different angles of attack to help leaders and people in under stress situations to deal with with the situation of this constant cortisol, adrenaline overshoot, and we offer them the variety of options so that they can set their own priorities, set their own pace, and choose what they want to, right?
Right. And I've just been writing a few things down as you talked about there, and as a flow, a holistic but research-based and science-grounded experience is very new for me. I don't see those out there. I see other types of retreat, but I can see the value in that as a leader myself. And that first pause that you have to do before you can cope with that, of course, is that recharge and reset. I get that too. And that recalibration, so that you've got the long-lasting changes, the leveraging those points to flex, to improve your mental and physical health, the healthy practices to create, if you like, new habits, embed those habits as well. It's something that I can see very valuable. And you've You've touched on neuroscience, you've touched on neuroplasticity and more. And of course, you mentioned that this is a science-based retreat as well, and you use those kind of techniques there. So I suppose this is two questions in one here, is that tell me a little bit more about that science behind it and how you apply that in the techniques, and some examples, if you have them as well, of how that's concretely supporting leaders as they go through this journey.
Right. So perhaps let me just start perhaps with a very, very quick glance on at the concept of the journey itself before I deep dive into this science focus on the different areas, maybe in a little bit more detail. So if you want to, you mentioned holistic, so we aiming at really tackling physical, psychological, and emotional aspects, right? So you could also maybe call it a bit more fancy, body, mind, and soul, right? We designed it a little bit, like one would design a leadership program, right? Meaning that this is a week-long program, and we have every day with a different focus on a different aspect that covers one of the areas, or actually multiple areas. And these every day is run or is led by extraordinary, really internationally renowned subject matter expert. We call them masters. So when you would design a leadership program, you would probably do it in a at least in a business school. You might want to find a similar idea behind it. What is also very important for me, and this is because it is important for this long-lasting change, is that it's not just, we don't just throw content at our fellow travelers on that journey, but, they really get a very, let's say, bespoke tutoring and mentoring and coaching through it, meaning that we have, every participant gets individual coaching on their goals, but also they are accompanied by a nutritionist who kind of focus on that area, and we support them, but in making sense of the content and the practice that they experience every day, and try to translate it into what does that mean to me, and what can I take on? So, the practice sessions are very practical. We have, practice sessions in the morning and in the evening, and everybody can choose different areas: meditation, body work, breath work. We have a lot of focus on nutrition because it is so important. So we also we eat very well. But largely the day is, structured around a more theoretical part where you kind of understand the concept and why we do things and why we teach you this part. So meditation or this neuroscience aspect. And then in the afternoon, you get really into integration, how we call it. So it is the part where you really develop you discover the different types of practices and you make sense of them, and you try them out to be able to say, okay, this one works for me and that doesn't work for me, right? But, I think one of the key aspects of it is that, is this social aspect of the SOLARIS concept, because, it is this group dynamic of this type of retreat, right, that you have. In a way, Solaris came from, the name Solaris came from the book by Stanislav Lem. And in this book, Solaris is actually an imaginary planet where there is a temporary society, right? So we were, this is how we got inspired by it, because we are aiming to create a temporary, intense society of practice and, and exploration for this week, where journey travelers exchange on their experience. They have groups of practice where they can align around like-minded people, exchange on how it's going for them. And we have these masters, benevolent masters and stuff to to coach you, to guide you, to be with you from the morning to the evening, from the breakfast or the morning practice, even before that, to the dinner afterwards with walks and conversation by the fireplace. And this whole experience, is really aiming at helping you to create this momentum to launch your transformational journey and to keep on this in a later stage, right?
So that's
the design.
Yeah, but it's so well thought out. And maybe for the last point, take us into some of that science behind it as well. Just give us the headlines around kind of how deep do you go into the science and why is it that important?
Yes. So, well, we go actually really deep into science, right? Because I think that's really, really important. And, not all of it is perhaps visible to the participants, but it is visible to us when we design it, when we talk about it, and when we have selected our masters to join us. And perhaps, so our key leverage point or our kind of, key attack is really to focus on alleviating stress, or to really help people mastering stress levels stress in a better way, to help them increasing resilience and live a better life by adapting health promoting behaviors. And we focus, not every stress is bad, so I also want to make that sure, right? There are also very healthy stress levels where you are more focused, where you are when you have like the kind of creative type of stress, right? But we're talking about a toxic stress that is for there for a longer time, and that kind of leads to what we call allostatic overload. And allostatic overload or allostasis means the brain and body response in a physiological and behavioral way to adapt to this threat, right? External threat, and that leads to metabolic hormone releases like adrenaline or epinephrine, and so on and so forth. So what we different hormones that are being secreted, and I don't want to go into that because I don't think that's perhaps let's say necessary and important at that level. But we need to deal with this, because if we don't deal with it, then we can actually really work and get the brain out of that malfunctioning state when it is flooded with all these hormones, and you have all these impacts on focus, on attention, and on and then all the hormonal diseases that impact actually your body, in the sense that you have higher heart rates, you have glucose levels in your body that are no longer healthy, and so on and so forth. So the good part about that is that our brain is an amazing organ, and it has a capacity to change, which we call neuroplasticity, right? So and that's where we are hooking into it, right? We're using neuroplasticity to intentionally alter our circuits, right? So if you want to, we're trying to really physically, through meditation techniques, we trying to really physically alter the default stress response. And there is a vast body of research, again, to demonstrates positive side effect of meditation. And it is, meditation helps with depression, with anxiety, with emotion regulation, at the connectivity of neurons, Eckardt focus and slow thinking. But we are working on different types of techniques, like, for example, non-sleep deep rest, which is a technique that I've come across listening to the Huberman Lab. So bowing to Dr. Huber Lab here, which is a technique that helps you to slow down your brain waves, to relax your brain, to help you regulate your dopamine levels. Some of you may remember dopamine is the happy hormone, right? So you get back into a better mood, more motivation. And then we tackle, from the body angle, through, nutrition, supplements, vitamin, minerals, prebiotics, probiotics. We tackle all the other effects, on the human body. And we know that there is a very strong relationship between bidirectional relationship between the gut and the brain, and the brain and the gut. So no happy brain without a happy gut. So we need to tackle this as well. And and there, for example, stuff like I mentioned already, what you take in, of course, is important, but there's also other stuff like body work, which is, for example, we use yoga techniques or techniques from yoga. And I mentioned already breath, relaxing muscles, improving coordination and balance, and, and digestion through movement. Yeah, that comes into play to really, get that, to really alleviate this impact on the stresses from all angles that we actually have. And the nice side effect is it actually also works against aging.
Right, that's a great one, isn't it? Wow, gosh, you've put so much into this 40-odd-minute discussion. Oh no, but it's just so fascinating though, and I'm looking at it and I'm taking a few words, and I'm looking at what I've written down here, and I've underlined it a few times, saying this is a body, mind, and soul tune-up for leaders backed by science. Would I be right?
Yes, that would be about right? And as I say, it is everything connected us to everything, right? In the good sense, and that's why we're so super happy that we have, we could pull this amazing team of masters that are not only extraordinary in their own field, but they're also so complementary, and they work together in such a great way so that we can really kind of, we can create this holistic approach of body, mind, and soul, and get out of this great exhaustion, and kind of, get ahead of the game, go back in the driving seat, and yes, and be a more effective leaders, right? Or more happy individuals.
Yes, and what a great positive message to end on. And I'm sure there's many tuning into this, Anna, that will want to get in touch. They may want to even check into one of these SOLARIS journeys. So how do they find out more? How do they connect with SOLARIS, and how do they keep the conversation going with you?
I mean, first of all, I think you will provide people with a number of links. We have QR codes. Do not hesitate to drop me an email. I'm a very approachable person. So, if you want to know more, Jeremy, I would also say, if I would hope that you would be also entry point. If you don't want to reach out to us directly, reach out to Jeremy. Jeremy knows how to find us. But you will have, I think, the full set of links, and we have a website. You can follow us on Instagram, where we also come up with little tips and tricks from time to time. So there's always a nice thing to add on to do, and I think, and then of course, we are more than happy to welcome any interested person to join us on a retreat. The next one is coming up end of October, beginning of November. So the inscription time is running now, but this is what's going on right now, right? And how to reach us.
So for those listening, Anna, that may not see this on screen, what's the website, please?
The website, the website is www.solaris.academy, right? .academy. Right, so that's the website name. So solaris.academy, because we're like we aiming to be an academy rather than a retreat.
Well, lots of food for thought. Anna, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It has been a true pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. Please like, comment and support us on your favourite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.